Late August. Tree has recovered remarkably. Hey, this is Jelle, growing bonsai, and today we're looking at a Brazilian rain tree. This Brazilian rain tree I grew from seed. A few years ago I had the opportunity to get some Brazilian rain tree seeds. I took it, I planted them, and I grew them. This is the smaller one. My much bigger one is doing much better and in fact is a lot bigger. They are exactly the same age. This was not doing so well, but this one, don't you just love it? But this video is not about the big tree, it's about the small one. This one came outside in early spring. Of course, these live in my windowsill over winter, and it was not doing all that well. It was sitting in a much shallower pot and it was just weak. So I decided I put it in a deeper pot where basically the effect of water accumulation at the bottom of the pot is less strong than in a shallow pot. I chose this as a front. And I decided this is going to be a nice viewing angle with this as the potential front of the tree. This branch was weak, that branch was weak, and now actually the world has turned around. This has become the strongest branch. Which means that I'm now wondering, is this still the right front? The front that I have here has a very nice curvature of the trunk and smoothly goes over here into the main trunk, which of course over time I would have to bring up a little bit. This could be a nice side branch and that could be a nice side branch, and I was hoping for something to pop here to create a nice little bonsai from that angle. Particularly the lower trunk is nice because it really comes and swoops towards you. It really is bending towards the viewer. Now if I turn this around, basically the tree goes quite flat from this angle. So the only real alternative I would have is to keep turning, and I'd end up roughly somewhere here as a front of a tree. The downside is here. The lower trunk has an odd shape. It really comes very much towards the viewer but then bends away. But if I look at these branches, they come towards the viewer, so we could use this. I'm planning on doing informal upright with this, not the Savannah style. So in the end I need to make a selection of the branches. And what I'm thinking about now is that the back branch that is sitting here is actually too heavy. So I might clip this one off, just keeping this one and the small green one here in the back. And this would become a side branch. Here the connection is still quite thick for that. But if this becomes the main trunk and I let this fatten up, then eventually this will become in size with the main trunk. Then, if I look at the branches here, and I have a trunk that comes up and up and up, then I'd have one side branch, a second side branch, a front branch, and even a back branch. And I might use this one as a little extra back branch here. So I'd have a nice little potential bonsai tree here. What I need to do for this is, I need to clip off the back branch. Might actually take a cutting, because many people have been asking me for cuttings and I've run out. I'm going to wire this one out, the main trunk out. I'm going to wire the side branches down. In this video you'll see me use a couple of tools. A concave cutter or a rounded concave cutter. One is straight, one is rounded, to make a cut with a depression on the trunk. Regular pruning scissors, azalea scissors I think they are, or butt scissors, which I use for pruning fine twigs. Wire scissors. Wire scissors are used for cutting wire. I've got a few bunches of scrap wire because I don't think you need to throw away your wire every time you have wired a tree. Old wire can be reused. I'm not going to use cut paste. I'm not going to use a root hook. I'm not going to use a cutting knife. I am going to use a chopstick to point things out. Then I'm going to let it grow for a little bit to show that the work done doesn't hamper the tree. Because one of the things that Brazilian rain trees are known for, actually two of the things that are known for, is first of all, if you cut off the branch of a Brazilian rain tree, you always have to leave a stub. They have a tendency to really die back into the trunk. So when I remove a big chunk here, I need to show you that this actually doesn't kill the tree. Second of all, if you wire them, branches tend to die off. At least that's what I see on fora. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wire it out and hopefully show you that it doesn't have to die off. Now let's get started here with the cutting. I said I was going to keep this smaller branch but remove the bigger branch. So I'm just going to remove it, but I'm going to leave a stub so it doesn't die off all the way down. So just this much. And then I'll just have to find a suitable spot to clip this into two. And I'll just leave one side branch, two side branch. This I can take off, it's dead. This is dead as well. Just going to get infected. So one side branch, two side branch. Clip it off there, and I'm just going to dip it in some of the rooting hormones that sits here on the lid. Just that easy. Don't make it more complex than needed. Plop these directly into PotMid substrate, which I'm now going to water well, and after that I'll put the whole thing in here and put it in a warm semi-shaded spot. Clean cuttings, a little bit of rooting hormone, protected environment and a bit of warmth is for many species enough to get roots. So now basically all we need to do is take a wire, this one is 2 millimeters, and we loop it around, well, first of all the base, the trunk, then going up into this side branch, and we're going to loop it around the main trunk line on this side. And here we need to make sure that the side branches that are there end up on the outside of the curve. So let me just get this onto the main trunk. It's important to realize this wire is actually quite thick for this first branch, so I only want to use a very small portion of it here on the branch, and I'm going to actually go below and over instead of over and around. Not because this is the best way to wire it. Making sure it comes over first is better, but in this case it works because I'm going to go down low on the other one, and this is more important because I want to bend the trunk up. I'm going to start with the wire from the bottom. Always make sure that if you push the wire on a trunk, it tightens when you bend the trunk. So now what you can tell is that this is a side branch, this is a side branch, and I'm going to go wire this up, and here I'm going to treat this as a side branch and this as the main trunk. It is a little bit tricky because you need to move between the branches without moving everything too much and without breaking off too many of the leaves. Do you actually know that these individual things are not leaves? No? Let me explain that in a bit. So the little trick that I have here to make sure that the branches don't die off is to be very gentle, but also to make long loops, have a wire that is a little bit too thick, and don't put it on too tight. So very loose coils. Now here the wire is actually getting a bit on the thick side for the branch that I'm wiring, even with the intent to use a thick wire, but it's such a little short distance that I'm going to continue with this and just hope that the top doesn't die off on me. Now there is this first side branch, and then there's another side branch here, and both of them need to be wired together. Now this I want to wire down, so ideally the wire comes over the top before it goes into the rest of the branch, and I can just put one coil over the branch here, so it is basically anchored here on this branch. Now I can take this wire and follow it along the trunk up, ending up with my next branch. So now, of course, if we look from the front, it is possible to take this first branch and say this is actually going to go down a little bit more because it is really a branch, and gently pull the main trunk up. I'm going to bend it at the base to the right, and the reason is there's a side branch on the left a little bit further up, and now I can, at that side branch, bend it to the left again. The side branch I can bring forward and down a little, and the same with this first side branch, bring it down and then the end back up and forward. Now I can take the main trunk again and shape it further to come back, and then the tip forward. And if I now look carefully, there's a side branch here, and I want a curve to the left. There's another one there and I want a curve to the right. And actually this here is way too long for the top. I'm just going to trim it out to one leaf. This I can actually use as a cutting again. I'm taking off the two base leaves, taking my cutting paste, chopping it in there, opening the baggie and popping it in the pot that I already had. Now of course here you can bend around as much as you want, but the more you bend, the more risk you have that branches are going to break or get damaged. So this has to be quite gentle. I think this is roughly the idea that I had. This branch of course is too long because I don't want this to fatten up all that much and it doesn't fit the whole profile, and I'm going to remove it here at a forward moving branch. Guess what this is going to be? Then this branch is quite long, but I do want it to fatten up a little bit, so I'm just going to prune a little bit off, just like that. The top can grow. This branch I could wire out with a little thin aluminium wire, but I can also decide I'm just going to let it grow for a little bit and I'm going to cut it lower down later on. That's what I'm going to do because that will aid the overall development of this trunk. I think with that we have come to the end of the dilemma that I had with this tree. I think it is set up now to get better through the season, and at the end of the season there will be a video update on this plant, but for now this is going to go into semi-sun, gets watered, a little bit of fertilizer, a bit of TLC. Now before people tell me that I don't keep my promises, look at this. Basically this is a leaf, this whole thing is a leaf. So what I'm clipping off now is one leaf. And it is a leaf because there's no options here, there's no buds, nothing can grow from this. This is just the whole structure. Here is the only bud for the plant to continue growing. This really is becoming a bit of a problem. People ask me, why do you have so many trees? I just can't help myself, because every time that I prune a tree that is interesting, nice cultivar or a species that not many people have, the prunings go in the pot. And then they root and I have another bunch of plants. I mean, in this pot now again 5 cuttings of Brazilian rain tree. Right, a week has passed and you can see the tree is not really suffering a lot, but you can see some of the leaves are still folded, but there's a new leaf forming here already. This tree is not concerned with the work that I've done. Here, this one is even sprouting and pushing. Late August, tree has recovered remarkably well. And I would say it was a good choice. Now this I can still let grow as a sacrifice, and this maybe as well. These I could wire out, but I'm not gonna. Right now it has a good start as a new bonsai. Dilemma solved.